Welcome to a greatest hits edition of Kent Hance, the best storyteller in Texas podcast. We've pulled out some of our favorite stories from the past few years and put them into one episode. We would appreciate it if you would hit the like and subscribe button, and if you don't mind, leaving a positive review. Those reviews really help us get the podcast out to more people. Enjoy the greatest hits edition of Kent Hance, the best storyteller in Texas.
But the characters, one of the ones I want to start out with, telling a story about, is Babe Schwartz. Schwartz and I represented Lubbock and Odessa in the state senate. He represented Galveston. And our areas were really diverse politically. And he was very liberal and I was conservative, but we were friends. That was at a time in politics that you didn't hate people that you disagreed with. And of course, that's since fallen by the wayside. But Schwartz was a great storyteller. And but one of the funniest stories on Babe Schwartz is when he was 27 years old, he got a letter, anonymous letter, wasn't signed, said, Mr. Schwartz, and he was an assistant district attorney sending people to prison, said, Mr. Schwartz, I'm going to kill you. That's all it said. Kind of a short and to the point letter. And he grabbed that letter and went running downstairs to the sheriff's office. He said, Sheriff, I've got to get a gun. And the sheriff looked at the letter and said, it's just some nut trying to scare you. And Schwartz said, well, they've done a hell of a good job. And the sheriff said, you don't need a gun. You'll shoot the wrong person. You just, tried to talk him out of it. Finally, the sheriff gave up. And the sheriff said, okay, go down to this pawn shop and tell them I sent you and get you a .38 revolver. And for people that are not used to shooting, if you're going to get a gun, get a .38 revolver, because all you have to do is point and pull. If you get automatic, you've got to learn too much, and you'll forget it and it'll jam or there'll be a problem. But if you've got a revolver, if you want to shoot at something, you just point at that object and pull the trigger. And so Schwartz was going to go down and get that, and the sheriff said, now look, babe, when you get the gun, take it down to Billy's welding shop and get him to file the gun sight off. Babe Schwartz looked at the sheriff and said, why would I take the gun down to have the gun sight, filed off, which is the little, looks like a BB at the end of the barrel, so you can sight it up. And he said, the reason you have it filed off smooth, babe, is so when they take it away from me and stick it up your rear, it won't hurt so bad. In this day and time, there are two words that do not mix: alcohol and send. If you've been drinking alcohol, do not hit send. You'll regret it. I just promise you. We had people along the way, not a bunch, but there's been a couple of people that I've fired because they kept mixing alcohol and send after they were warned. Do not drink and hit send. And, all my career, long before computers and everything, I might dictate a letter where I was mad at somebody. And I would tell my assistant, don't send it. Let me look at it in the morning. And I'd look at it in the morning, it might be a little different. I might go, well, maybe I shouldn't send it. Or I'd rewrite it. It wasn't as harsh. But sometimes we write harsh things and they, it doesn't help you. And it comes home to haunt you. Also, we've got an audio I'll show you that where we talk, a guy put reply all instead of reply. And he said some things he did, that you got to be careful because it's a millionth of a second and it's gone. All the fast food places are almost all of them, 95% have a drive-through window. Mm-hmm. And as you've said before, even Sonic had a drive-through window.
Right.
And that came about, and the reason David Rich invented that in Sierra Vista, Arizona. And he had some guy that had a huge military base right next to it. And the military guys were told they couldn't come in when they were in their work uniforms. And so they talked to him about it. and he couldn't deliver on base, and he said, well, I'll put a window, and y'all can drive up and get it at the window. And so he put in a window, and they'd come up and order, and then they got them a speaker and everything so they could order and then drive up. And that was a local manager of a McDonald's came up with that solution to a problem. I've always said anytime there's a major problem, the American ingenuity will come up with a solution. And it's just, you go back 120 years ago, and the U.S. Geological Society said there's no more oil and gas to be found. We're running out. It's a dying industry. Mm-hmm. And, in less than a couple of years, the oil spindletop down at Beaumont hit. And there was plenty of oil and gas. Mm-hmm. And they're getting, if you go to Midland or Tyler, any place where there's a lot of oil and gas, used to, if you went to the petroleum club or to a cafe or something, they'd talk about dry holes. They don't talk about dry holes anymore because they've got so sophisticated at finding oil and gas that they don't have, they don't have that problem like they used to. Still, mm-hmm. It may have some, but not much. You don't hear people talk about it. The only story I've ever told in a campaign that made the front page of the New York Times was when I was running against President Bush. And it was a story, and I'll tell this at the end, he had a good comeback. He eventually got him a pretty good comeback, so I had to quit telling the story. But he'd get up and speak, and I'd get up and speak, or vice versa. I knew what he was going to say. He knew what I was going to say, And so I got up and told that one summer when I was in college, I was working for the agriculture department, measuring land and seeing who had planted within their allotments, and summer job. And that a guy pulled up, and I said, a guy pulled up in a big old Mercedes, and kind of like the one you drove before the campaign started, George. And I said it had Connecticut tags. In fact, that's, you were born in Connecticut. And he had looked, and so he later said one time I said that, and he said, yeah, I wanted to be born in Texas, but my mother happened to be in Connecticut at the time, and I felt like I just need to be near her. And the crowd really liked that. And so, he had a good comeback. But I said, this guy pulled up, and he asked me where a certain ranch was. And I said, you go about 3 miles north and turn east, and go a couple miles, then turn north and go about a mile, and you'll come to a cattle guard. And at the cattle guard, turn left, and you're right there, less than a half mile. And the guy rolled his window up in that big old Mercedes, those Connecticut tags, and started off, and he stopped and backed up. And he said, hey, young man, what color uniform that cattle guard have on? So I told that story. And Bush later told that story when he was president. He was in Montana and told that story on somebody. And so we laugh about that.
Thank you very much for listening. A reminder that we put out new episodes every Monday and that you can follow us on Instagram at Best Storyteller Podcast.